The coldest place on Earth is heating up. Beneath miles of ice in the Arctic lies an estimated 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and nearly 30% of its untapped natural gas. But this isn't just about energy. It's about power, and a silent geopolitical race that most of the world isn't watching. Welcome to Rook. In this video, we explore the quiet struggle unfolding at the top of the planet, where melting ice is revealing more than just open water. It's revealing ambition, opportunity, and a new frontier of global competition. This is the silent war for the Arctic. For centuries, the Arctic was protected by one simple thing: ice. Thick, impenetrable, deadly ice. The region surrounding the North Pole spans territories belonging to Russia, Canada, United States, Norway, and Denmark. For most of modern history, the Arctic was strategically interesting, but economically unreachable. That's changing. As global temperatures rise, Arctic sea ice has been shrinking at alarming rates. Shipping routes that were once fantasy are now seasonally navigable. Vast stretches of ocean that were frozen year-round are opening. And what lies beneath that ice has transformed the Arctic from a frozen wasteland into a potential goldmine. Oil, natural gas, rare earth minerals. Suddenly, geography is no longer a barrier. It's an invitation. In 2008, the U.S. Geological Survey released an assessment that changed everything. The Arctic may hold 90 billion barrels of undiscovered oil, 1,670 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, and massive deposits of strategic minerals. To put that into perspective, that's enough energy to influence global markets for decades. And in a world still deeply dependent on fossil fuels, energy security equals national security. Countries that control Arctic reserves could gain economic leverage, strategic shipping dominance, military positioning advantages. This isn't just about drilling. It's about shaping the balance of power in the 21st century. But here's where it gets complicated. No single country owns the Arctic. At least, not all of it. The Arctic isn't governed by a single treaty like Antarctica. Instead, most claims fall under the framework of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Under this agreement, coastal nations can claim exclusive economic zones extending 200 nautical miles from their shores. But there's a catch. If a country can scientifically prove that an underwater continental shelf extends beyond those 200 miles, it can claim even more territory. This is where things become strategic. In 2007, a Russian expedition planted a titanium flag on the seabed beneath the North Pole, a symbolic gesture that signaled serious intent. Other nations responded with their own scientific missions. This isn't a war of bullets. It's a war of data, maps, and legal arguments. A quiet competition to prove ownership of the ocean floor. But oil isn't the only reason this region matters. In fact, the real power of the Arctic might not be underground at all. It might be on the surface. And it could reshape global trade entirely. As Arctic ice melts, new maritime routes are emerging. The most significant is the Northern Sea Route along Russia's coastline. This passage can cut travel time between Asia and Europe by up to 40% compared to the Suez Canal route. Shorter routes mean lower fuel costs, faster deliveries, reduced congestion. For global trade, that's transformative. For Russia, it's strategic leverage. For China, which calls itself a near-Arctic state, it's an opportunity to integrate the route into its broader trade ambitions. For the United States and NATO allies, it raises serious security considerations. Shipping lanes are not just commercial arteries. They are geopolitical pressure points. And whoever controls Arctic transit could influence global commerce in subtle but powerful ways. While public attention remains low, military activity in the Arctic has quietly increased. Russia has reopened Soviet-era bases and expanded its Arctic fleet. NATO nations have conducted cold weather exercises. The United States has emphasized renewed Arctic strategy. But so far, the Arctic remains relatively stable. Why? Because open conflict in such a harsh environment benefits no one. The cost is extreme, the logistics are brutal, and global consequences would be severe. So instead of confrontation, we see positioning. Infrastructure development, icebreaker fleets, surveillance systems, legal filings. It's competition without collision, at least for now. Here's the deeper irony. The very process that is making Arctic oil accessible, climate change, also makes exploiting it controversial. Extracting fossil fuels in a fragile ecosystem carries enormous environmental risks. An oil spill in icy waters would be far more difficult to contain than in temperate seas. And the Arctic plays a critical role in regulating global climate systems. This creates a paradox. The region is opening because of warming, but drilling there could accelerate that warming further. Some argue the Arctic should remain untouched. Others argue that as long as global energy demand exists, someone will exploit it. The debate is not just economic, it's moral. The truth is, no single nation is likely to dominate the Arctic outright. International law, economic costs, environmental pressure, and diplomatic complexity make unilateral control unlikely. Instead, the future of the Arctic will likely be shaped by gradual negotiation, strategic partnerships, selective development, and ongoing competition beneath the surface. Silent war may never become loud, but its outcome will influence global energy markets, shipping routes, and geopolitical alignments for decades. The Arctic is not just the next oil frontier. It's a test of how major powers compete in a changing world. For centuries, the Arctic was defined by isolation. Today, it is defined by possibility. What was once frozen and unreachable is becoming central to global strategy. The ice is melting, the maps are being redrawn, and the quiet contest for control continues, far from headlines, but close to the future of global power. And in the coming years, the coldest place on Earth may shape the hottest debates in geopolitics. If you found this analysis valuable, consider subscribing, because the most important global shifts are often the quietest ones, and we'll be exploring them here.